views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rudy Cashman, neurosurgeon, Fort Wayne, Indiana for 41 years. But I'm only 39 years old. No, kidding aside. Tonight I have a very interesting show for you. Having done neurosurgery for this many years and being a physician, I noticed that 75% of the patients that I'm looking at need a wellness coach. That's all they need. No prescriptions. They don't need procedures and operations. So I've taken a major interest in this subject. I'm a surgeon by profession, but I'm a wellness doctor by passion. And you'll notice that as we continue with this talk. This is very interesting tonight. I'm going to discuss 5 books I've written. I call them the Magic 5. And this involves a way of eating, a non-diet, how to obtain a good health, live to be 100, have a sound mind and a sound body, how to avoid cancer, how to avoid type 2 diabetes, how to avoid strokes and heart attacks and autoimmune diseases. In these 5 books, I have recorded for you in a very understandable way the method that you should follow. And what are the name of these books? The Secret of the Non-Diet for Adults. We will discuss first, and then The Secret of the Non-Diet for Children, then The Secret to Reversing Type 2 Diabetes 90% of the time in 60 days. I've been running way of eating classes at Lutheran Hospital for a few years now. I'm totally convinced that it works, and it's wonderful news. It's great news. Then the next book is about the psychology of eating, and then The Secret of True Motivation, how to motivate yourself to do that. We all need some of that. The covers on these books are right on here. And so let's begin with The Secret of the Non-Diet for Adults. And I'll hold the book up for you right here. I think it's fairly easy to read, well-researched. So this is not a diet. This is a way of eating. The best method in this book, and I'll explain what it means shortly, the flexitarian way of eating. This is really the way that I eat. Little calorie counting. Eat till you're full. That's the beauty of it. Because if you're eating high dense nutrient foods, you don't really need to watch that closely the amount that you eat. That's been my experience, and that's in the literature. So what I recommend, a low glycemic index complex carbs. You can look at a website called Glycemic Index, and they will tell you what the sugar content of that food is, and you should pick under 50. They're rated 1 to 100, 0 to 100, and you should generally pick under 50. A carrot may even be 70, but you don't eat much of it, so it doesn't really matter. Vegetables, all you can eat. Legumes, beans, all you can eat. Fruit, essentially all you can eat. Limited amount of meat products, though, and we'll discuss that in more detail. That's the basic way of eating for adults. You don't want vascular disease, you don't want strokes, you don't want heart disease, you don't want autoimmune disease, you want a normal weight. This clearly works. I teach generally 4 general ways of eating. A vegetarian diet, and I'll explain to you in a minute what that means. A vegan diet, a flexitarian diet, very interesting. It's a way I eat, and I'll tell you about it in a minute. A nutritarian way of eating. So to give you some choice, what are my references from this? A book that I wrote. Dr. Joel Fuhrman, very famous. He wrote Eat to Live, very famous book. Has a nice website too. Dr. Esselstyn, Cleveland Clinic, studied 50 advanced heart disease patients, and he taught exactly what I teach. And all these patients are alive 20 years later. Very interesting. Dr. Franklin House wrote a very famous book, The 30-Day Miracle. I found it after I wrote my book on reversing type 2 diabetes. I jumped 2 feet in the air because he's been running his camp for 30 years. He feels he can reverse type 2 diabetes in 30 days. On page 78 of his book, what he outlines how to eat, is exactly what I teach at the Mind Body Institute at Lutheran Hospital. So I know it works. Confirmatory evidence. 30 years he's been doing this. So what's a vegetarian way of eating? No meat products. You can eat cheese, for example. Seventh-day Adventists live longer. They follow this way of eating. Even good for teenagers and children. The American Dietetic Association, the Canadian Dietetic Association said if you eat a well-balanced vegetarian diet, it's even good for children. So the scientific proof is there. But watch the amount of dairy products you consume. I have a friend who's Seventh-day Adventist, and I had his blood figures checked. His cholesterol was elevated. So the amount of dairy you eat, I think, is important. We had him cut back the amount of dairy he's eating, and his cholesterol dropped. What's a vegan way of eating? If you have advanced heart disease, vascular disease, you've had bypass surgery, you've had angioplasties, this is the way you've got to eat if you want to save your life. No meat, no dairy. No meat, no dairy. And avoid everything that has a mother or a face. Excellent for reversing type 2 diabetes. For example, if you eat this way, your type 2 diabetes will go away 90% of the time once you reach a normal body mass index. If it doesn't rot or sprout, leave it out. Okay, let's have a little humor here today. Flexitarian way of eating, which is essentially the way I eat at this time, it's 80% vegan. In other words, I might eat fish twice a week and maybe a little lean meat another day a week, but the rest of the time, eat the complex carbs, low glycemic index, 100% whole grain, vegetables, beans, and fruit. That's what I eat the rest of the week. Maybe some lean meat once a week. Excellent way of maintaining normal weight. I weigh 145. I did not always weigh that, but I go to Dr. Furman's 1-week course. This year is in Utah. I'm going to that again, and what he teaches is a nutritarian way of eating. In a way, it's really the same as a flexitarian, because I notice he although he recommends high dense nutrient foods, he allows you to eat some lean meat a couple of days a week. And but high dense nutrient foods, what does that really mean? Allows lean meat twice a week. What it really means is mainly vegetables, beans, fruit, 100% whole grain, some complex carbohydrates of low glycemic index. The glycemic index measures the amount of sugar in the food and how rapidly that sugar raises in your bloodstream. That determines the glycemic index. Watermelon is high sugar. It's very high in the glycemic index, for example. And but this way of eating has a lot of vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals. These have in them very important chemicals that prevent cancer, that have in it a lot of the enzymes for the metabolism of your body. And Dr. Furman eats an ounce or two of nuts daily. Don't eat a handful because they have a lot of fat in them, but they have good fats in them, monosaturated fats. But I think a handful is a bit much. But I spoke to Dr. Furman personally. I played tennis with him at these conferences, and I beat him last year. The year before, he beat me. I'm looking forward to this year's match. But he eats a lot of nuts. I eat a few about an hour before dinner. I found my appetite goes down. A good thing. 5 or 6 almonds, and my appetite goes down quickly, very quickly. And also, he recommends smoothies where you take fruit and mix it in a blender. They are very rich in vitamins. He adds some flaxseed to it, some omega-3, which is very healthy, because you need some essential fats, and the omega-3s have them in it. So you can eat fish or take a few nuts, and you get the omega-3, which are very important in your diet. The Magic 5, I called these 5 books, and I have available them on CD, DVDs, books. I have a way of eating program at Lutheran Hospital, the 12-week program, very low cost. I give lectures once a month at the auditorium at Lutherans. They're free. Everything about the mind and the body. I'm trying to be Dr. Wellness. Dr. Wellness. Let's talk about nutrients, for example. What are macronutrients? You hear the term, and carbohydrates are macronutrients. What are carbohydrates? They are complex sugars. You have these simple sugars. For example, bread is nothing but a sugar. It's been stripped of all its nutrients, the simple sugar chains, but a baked potato would be a complex carb. Still has its coverings on it. That's a carrot would be a complex carbohydrate, for example. And the advantage to complex carbs is that because they have so much fiber in them, that blocks the absorption a lot of the LDL, the bad cholesterol, the bad chemicals. And if you eat 100 calories of a complex carbs, you might absorb into the bloodstream maybe 60% at best. So 40% of the calories are going out in your stool. So calories in, calories out, frankly, it's not the same. You hear it all the time. It's not correct because complex carbs, you don't absorb them all. So more of those you eat, the less calories you will take in. And the fiber in them blocks the absorption of a lot of the nasty chemicals and bad cholesterols. And so the teaching years ago was to be a diabetic couldn't eat complex carbs or carbohydrates in general. I think it's incorrect. I think it's quite safe. But you should check your blood sugar. Be sure you can stand a baked potato, for example. Protein, we need some protein every day. We probably don't eat more than 50 grams a day. Actually, 35 is about correct. The average American eats about 150 grams of protein daily. That's very hard on the kidneys. That's very hard on the liver. And that's, frankly, is too much. Plant proteins is, frankly, all you need. You don't need the proteins from meat products. That's incorrect. I saw a doctor's wife recently, and I was speaking to her about the proper way of eating, and she said, "I got to have my protein from meat, got to have my protein." That's incorrect. You do not, frankly, need it. If you take some vitamin B12 on top of the plant protein, that is all you need. All the amino acids, the 21 of them, are indeed in plants. So the problem with eating meat, the protein in meat is accompanied by cholesterol, by fats. And it's very difficult to lose weight if you're eating a lot of fats because they have 9 calories per gram, for example, versus protein has only about 5. Now, fat is a micronutrient, and there's some essential fats that we need. The omega-3, we need a little bit of omega-6, more 3 than 6. We eat a ratio of about 20 to 1 of omega-6 over 3. That's pro-inflammatory. That's not good. We need to eat about 1 to 1. And omega-3 is found in fish, in nuts, for example, and in some beans, for example. So we do need some essential fats. The problem with eating a lot of fat is if you eat 100 calories of fat, 97% will be sitting on your buttocks, on your belly, within 4 hours. 4 hours. 97%, only 3% use of metabolism versus complex carbs, you only absorb about 60% and the rest is eliminated in the stool. Let's go to the micronutrients now, the minerals and vitamins and the phytochemicals. They regulate the metabolism of the body. They're very important. There are a lot of anti-cancer chemicals in there. We haven't really discovered the 20,000 phytochemicals completely. We've only discovered a few thousand of them, but they're extremely important. They essentially have no calories. So more of those that you eat, the better. They are in the vegetables and the fruits. Things of color have in it minerals, vitamins, and phytochemicals. Let's talk about metabolic syndrome. You hear about it a lot. I mean, what is it? It's also called Raven syndrome. It's called Syndrome X. It's very important. We have about 40 million people that have it. I'd say 30 million have no living idea they got it. It's very dangerous. It's characterized by high, low-density fats and very low HDL, which are the good fats that clean off your arteries. The LDL deposits cholesterol in your arteries. Characterized by insulin resistance, where the insulin can't get in your cells, and we'll talk about that later. I have a good diagram for you on that. Hypertension, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. That characterizes metabolic syndrome. 30 to 40 million people have this, are totally unaware of it, and they're painting the arteries, getting heart disease and cholesterol, cancer, and very important to know that you have metabolic syndrome. I probably diagnose a case or two a day where the physician have not picked up on it, and this is the pre-diabetic condition, and a very dangerous condition. It's not just pre-diabetes, it's also pre-heart disease, pre-stroke, pre-cancer, quite a bit of breast cancer associated with that. Let's talk about exercise a little bit. Why do we recommend exercise so much? It burns calories, for one thing. You can eat a little more if you exercise, but it also causes secretion of endorphins, which make us feel good. And also the endorphins reduce the appetite. So exercise a half hour before dinner is a good thing to do. It improves your muscle mass. And the reason to improve your muscle mass is that a pound of muscle just sitting there will burn 50 to 80 calories a day at rest, not even using them. So if you add 5 pounds of muscle, you're eliminating 300 or 400 calories a day just sitting there. So muscle mass is very important. Walk 30 minutes a day is very important. Lift some weights every other day. Remember, I talked about muscle mass. It becomes very important as we get older, especially. What people don't realize is we can double and triple our muscle strength into our 90s. People don't realize that. To improve your VO2 max, your maximum oxygen consumption, it's difficult. We can keep up with aging, but to really double the strength of our heart is difficult. But we can double and triple our muscle mass, which makes it a lot easier on our heart because it improves our metabolism of oxygen, glucose, and glycogen. So lifting weights every other day, not heavy weights, I'm talking about repetitive 5, 8, 10 pounds, build up the upper and lower body, very important. Most recommendations in books say, exercise 4 days a week, do some muscle building 2 days a week. I tell you honestly, beyond age 50, you should do it every day. That's the recommendation of most books and doctors. I think it's incorrect. 7 days a week, you should do 30 minutes of exercise, maybe 2 days a week for an hour, whether it's walking, weightlifting, dancing, yoga, whatever. Develop your program. After age 50, working out, and I'm serious about it, is as important as your job. Unless you're going broke, it is that important as your job. If you want to live to be 100, have sound mind and sound body, to be healthy, this is what you must do. You get in the habit of it. And stretch daily is important because as we get older, our tendons shorten and we get stiff. Just ask me, I'll tell you. Ever since I've been doing yoga, stretching regularly, I'm much looser. And exercise also reduces your appetite because it secretes serotonin and endorphins that turn your appetite down. Now let's switch to the Secret of the Nun diet for children. And since the 1990, we've had a 300% increase in children's obesity. Wow. 33% of children today are overweight. That's our future. That's our future. Much higher increase in some ethnic and racial groups. In some racial and ethnic groups, it's acceptable to be overweight, which is unfortunate. Also, they carry in them what's called the thrifty gene through evolution. They survived hundreds of thousands of years ago because they could eat the whole animal, they'd be overweight, didn't need again to eat for a month, and they survived. So they are pre-selected in evolution, and they're represented by Africans, Micronesians, South Americans, and the Japanese. It's only manifested if they eat the wrong food, and it triggers this. For example, in Kenya in 1954, they could not find an African who had a heart attack or stroke to show the medical students. But yet the same population were in the end of the United States eat the mad, toxic, sad American diet. I think some of it probably even came through slavery. They're eating this food, and hypertension, diabetes is rampant among these population and ethnic and racial groups. And I would like to emphasize that how important it is to eat the way that I'm teaching today, because the rate of hypertension and diabetes and strokes and heart attack is rampant in this population. The dialysis clinic is below me, and I see it every day. I know it's walking in there. And so metabolic syndrome is starting to be seen now in teenagers. We see type 2. We used to see only type 1 diabetes where they make no insulin, which is type 1. We saw it in children where the pancreas dies from a viral infection or whatever. But now we're seeing type 2 where there's too much insulin because the fat is in the blood blocking the entrance of sugar into the cell. I'll explain that further later. So we're seeing metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes in children. But invariably, their waistline's too big, they're overweight. But yet, in type 2, so we have to watch for this. If your child has that, they're in danger of developing diabetes at a very young age, and guess what's going to happen? They're going to have a heart attack and stroke in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. I see it all the time. I see it all the time. And 12 to 19-year-olds, we have a 20% increase in obesity. This is a very serious problem, and nationally needs to be attacked. I wish the president and his wife, who are working on this program, who just said, we are going to measure the waist of every child in the United States. I wish they had just said it. It is politically acceptable, believe me. A powerful president could easily say that, and we'd be saving the lives of many people. These are the people that are going to have the strokes, heart disease, and heart attacks at a young age. When I was in Washington, D.C., and in the neurosurgery program, I was taking out brain hemorrhages on a daily basis in a lot of the residents of Washington, D.C., because they had a rampant hypertension, rampant heart disease, and a brain hemorrhage was very common. Blood pressures that were unbelievable, and it occurred strictly for eating the wrong food. The mad, sad, toxic American diet, and if you eat the way I teach, you're not going to have this. It's very, very important. So how do you diagnose being overweight and obesity in a child? The body mass index, height and weight. There are formulas for that. There are tables in my books on that. And if you go to your doctor, the first thing you should do to your child is determine the BMI. If he doesn't do that, you're going to the wrong doctor. And you should be keeping a graph on your child and following that. You shouldn't just, I talked to one pediatrician recently, and he said, well, how do you determine whether you need the child's overweight? And I says, I look at them. That ain't going to do it. That isn't going to do it. You need to know the body mass index and a waist measurement. And I like to remind you too, unfortunately, we love our children, and you may be blind to your child's obesity. Perhaps you're overweight yourself, and you don't notice your husband's overweight, or the whole family may be overweight. I was sitting at a Tapanaki restaurant, Japanese restaurant recently, and in the table from across from me, from the little children to grandpa, everybody was overweight. And you know, I have a feeling, I feel sorry for them because I think they were blind to it. They'd have to be blind to it. They had serious obesity throughout. There's going to be a lot of illness there. And so get a metabolic panel blood test even as a child. Even as a child. They could be of normal weight. You might find the cholesterol sky high. 50 to 60% of teenagers today have elevated cholesterol. Well, who do you think is going to get the strokes, heart attacks, and cancer down the line? Fat has in it 20 nasty chemicals that cause cancer. They're the ones who are going to get the breast cancer, for example. They're going to get the prostate cancer. So run a metabolic panel even on your children. Most doctors don't think of it. They only want to do it if there's been strokes and heart disease at a young age in the family. No. If they're skinny, run the test. I mean, I know a family, actually they're kind of closely related to me, who eat an awful lot of meat. And I mean, I see them eating steaks at age 10 on a regular basis. I'd love to know what their metabolic panel is, but it's a little tough to tell some mother to get it done whether or not you're a patient, obviously, especially if you see them frequently. But I personally think it's very, very important. Don't think being thin means your cholesterol is normal. And the first year of college is very dangerous because all of a sudden we're under stress and we're eating the food of the dormitory. Everybody's eating out, going to fast food restaurants, and it's very common to get a 10, 20-pound weight gain in a college student. Before you know it, we're looking at obesity, metabolic syndrome in our sophomore year. It's common. Watch out for that. So when your child gets home on vacation, weigh them, find out and say, wait a minute, you're eating the wrong food. That's usually the thing, eating the wrong food. And your pediatrician should be a wellness doctor. Pediatrics is a wellness thing. If it's not a wellness doctor, you need a different doctor. And diagnosis of overweight and obesity. Let's continue that subject. In Bogalusa, Louisiana, a study was performed by Dr. Berenson. For 40 years, he's been running this study where he studied heart disease in children. Every child that died accidentally or of some disease process, they did an autopsy. Essentially everyone. And what they found that heart disease begins at age 4. They found children with an elevated bad LDL cholesterol at 6 months of age. This is written about in Dr. Charles Atwood, a very excellent book to read. Dr. Joe Furman has written a book on diet for children. He found people eat the proper high-dense nutrient diet get a lot less asthma. They get a lot less colds. Very interesting. Then I wrote about it. I read all their works, and it's really summarized in my books, and many other authors are summarized in my books. So heart disease begins at age 4. So check the profile at a young age. Know what the blood work of your child is. Syndrome X, metabolic syndrome, Dr. Raven syndrome, we talked about that already. I want to re-emphasize it though. It's a silent and deadly epidemic. You may have metabolic syndrome. If your waist measurement is 42 inches or larger, you're male, you got metabolic syndrome. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. And it's characterized by glucose intolerance, that you don't transfer glucose into the cell. I'm going to talk about that some more. Obesity is characterized by metabolic syndrome, hypertension. We talked about that. Blood fat abnormalities, and 40 million people have metabolic syndrome. I'm driving this point home so you really understand it. Children's bad habits, what we see a lot today, they're frequently eating chips. Let me tell you something about chips. I saw it described in a book. You know what a chip is? It's a tray for fat. When I read what they do to put a chip together, like a Dorito chip, for example, they compress the fat, they put salt in it, they put syrup in it. It is unbelievable what's in a chip. You need to get a whole grain chip. They are very dangerous. And then you put sour cream in them, you put butter in them, and you keep on adding the junk to it. And you got to be very careful the way they decorate food. They may put a little piece of spinach in the middle of it, and then they decorate it with fat. Fat, salt, and sugar are your enemies. Fat, salt, and sugar in the fast food industry, they know it. And that's what they make the foods out of. Fat, salt, and sugar. You got to watch out for those. A lot of children, 50% of children go to fast food restaurant at least once a day. I mean, there's some good food in some food restaurants, and it's changing a bit. But the majority of them, it's not what you want your child to eat. You want your child to eat French fries, for example. And they have a rapid rise in blood sugar and a high glycemic index food, a significant number of trans fats in them, although some of the places remove the trans fats, which are the bad fats. Parents, if a parent is overweight, the odds of your child being overweight is 80%. 80% chance your child's overweight. Couch potatoes, lack of exercise obviously lead to obesity. And watch the school lunches and soda machines that are available in your school and take an active participate in it. Find out what it is. Appear at lunch, go through the lunch line, and see what the kids are eating to get some idea if you're feeding them well at home, why aren't they maintaining normal weight? So you got to keep track of that. What are the related conditions to obesity in children? Asthma, type 2 diabetes. Of course, they're not going to live the normal lifespan if they have type 2 diabetes from obesity as a teenager. There's trouble there. You got to stop it. And you've got to, if you can't decide by looking at your child if they're overweight, ask a neighbor, because you could be blind to it. You love them so much, you're blind to it. That's not uncommon. That we look in the mirror, we're overweight, and we don't see it. For my books on psychology of eating, I realize that. Our perception in the mirror could be totally wrong. We could be too heavy, we could be too thin, we don't see it right. Yes, children's cancer is related to children's obesity. Much higher rate of cancer in children's obesity, yes. And it has psychological effects, anxiety and depression. Certainly the teenagers make fun of each other if they're not a proper weight. You go to some schools, and I gave the commencement address at a school recently, and I would say 95% of the children were of normal weight. Yet I gave a commencement address at another school, and 50% of the children are overweight. And it's related sometimes to poverty, sometimes to ethnic groups, sometimes to racial groups. It's a problem. It's a real problem. Again, to refer to the Bogalusa heart study, Dr. Berenson started in 1973, been going on almost 40 years. Increased LDL as early as 6 months, vascular disease at age 4. Family history is important. 10% of the people, there's a family history of vasculitis. These are the people, especially at a very young age, that they follow the high, dense nutrient way of eating. Because if mom and dad or grandpa start dying at 40 and 50 of heart disease and stroke, some in their 30s, if you don't put their children, their ancestors, on a proper way of eating, they may even be skinny, and their cholesterol is 400 in high school. You've got to put them on a strict way of eating, and you can save their lives. Otherwise, they're going to have a heart attack or stroke at 20, 30, 40 years old, can even be in their 20s. So family history is important. Obese child has 80% chance of being an obese adult. Interesting. Higher rate, as I already mentioned, African Americans, Mexicans, Micronesians, and Japanese. And that is strictly because they're eating the mad, sad, toxic American diet. If they were eating the nutrient-dense diet of their ancestors where they lived, like in Japan, obesity was unknown till our American restaurants, the ones that have the same name in every country, went there. Now the Japanese is rampant with metabolic syndrome and diabetes. As they move to Hawaii, it's even worse. When they move to California, they're like the rest of us because they have their thrifty genes. They're based on evolution. Okay? Let's talk about psychology of eating a little bit. Let me show you. Here's the book we just spoke about, the book on the Secret of the Non-Diet for Children. This is the book I wrote about that. The next book we're going to speak about in the minute will be about diabetes. But let me speak a little bit about psychology of food for children a little bit. We do it to relieve stress. Food is a womb, a cave, an escape, a stress relief. I know myself. I have a stressful day, and I try to grab something. I carry some nuts now anymore to do that on the way to tennis. I'm eating about 6 almonds and occasionally a banana, or have something ready for stress relief. There are chemicals in food. That's why we overeat. And dopamine, which makes us feel good. Frankly, food is a drug. Food is a drug. It's a drug. And it makes us feel good. The food secretes dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. Endorphins can also be secreted, though, by exercise. You exercise for 15 minutes, endorphins are secreted, that's your own morphine, and you feel better. But food will do the same, but it's certainly a lot more dangerous. If you secrete dynorphin, those are the ravenous overeaters. And I saw one on a plane recently. I sat down, and this very heavy-set gentleman came in, sitting with an empty seat between him and his wife, who was also overweight. He literally ripped open the potato chips with his teeth and put the whole thing down in a minute. 5 minutes later, he did the same darn thing. That's dynorphin working him. He can't help it. I don't criticize him. He cannot help it. And it certainly is a habit with him, reflected in his body, and obviously not going to live a long time. So fast food is immediate stress relief. You go down and have some fresh fries, you feel better, but then your blood sugar scoots up, dives down. Now you're more than hungry than ever. Besides, you don't feel good, you're lethargic. I know because years ago I go across town to play tennis. Dr. Crawford would come to the net and say, Rudy, did you stop at a fast food restaurant? He could tell the way I was moving. I don't do that anymore. And believe me, we've had all these problems with food, every one of us. But you try to learn. You try to learn. And so food is a legal drug. It's a legal drug. Just like I have some patients who are given a prescription by a doctor for narcotics. He says, you know, I'm a legal addict. Well, when you have food, it's a legal drug. The trouble is, you've got to eat every day. You don't have to drink alcohol every day. You don't have to take a narcotic every day. But you do need to eat every day. So it can be difficult. And the things you need to question yourself is your child addicted to sugar, refined foods? Remember, when the child cries, what do we give them? Sugar. So we start addicting them to sugar at a very young age. And there's such a thing as sugar addiction. I know. I've experienced it myself. And depressed children eat more because the sugar causes secretion of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, just like taking a narcotic to feel better. Sugar makes us feel better. We cry, you give them food. Let's speak about the failure of diets. When we diet and starve ourselves, it will not last. You may lose a few pounds. You may, if you eat a low-carbohydrate diet, like the Atkins diet, which frankly, the Atkins diet, I've seen in 2 books, they've called it a fraud. I agree. they starve you, and you use up the glycogen in your muscle. You have 3 pounds. Each pound of glycogen has got about 3 pounds of water with it, so you lose 3 pounds. By starving yourself, you lost 10 pounds because of the water. But after about a week or two, you get a ravenous appetite. You eat it all back, and you gain more than ever. I do not suggest these protein, low-carbohydrate diets. They don't work. It will not work out for you. They're not healthy because a lot of meat products bring a lot of cholesterol. You're going to die young. Remember, some of these authors of these books, they didn't live a very long life. And depressed children eat more. Keep all sugary foods out of sight. No exception. You go in the kitchen, there's donuts and cookies there. I know I just experienced Christmas, and the wife is putting 5 different desserts laying out there left over from the party. So, I mean, it's really tough for me to not to have some of that. But if they're not in sight, there's no cue, you're much less likely. So don't keep donuts and cookies in the house. This is ridiculous. Don't have it. The mother is in charge 80% of the time. So you must be careful what you buy. And keep all sugary foods out of sight, no exceptions. Feeding your infant. This is very interesting. Breastfeeding your child until age 2 is the best thing you could do for your child's brain. Why? Breast milk has in it a lot of the omega-3 fats. That builds a brain. The 3-pound brain is made of 60% of it is omega-3 fats. So if this is what you feed him with your own breast milk, obviously the child's going to have a bigger brain. I heard a congressman say the other day, and I think he's absolutely correct, that learning begins before conception. So what the mother weighs, what the mother eats, build the best brain for your child. And breast milk is shown to be the best for brain development. Is full of omega-3 fats. Human milk has no value after age 2. No mammal drinks the milk of another mammal except humans. To take some supplements has some value. EPA, DHA may have some value. Speak to your doctor about it. You can go to a health food store. And even during pregnancy, they can have value because of the omega-3 content. So mother's milk is the best. Best chance of enhancing your child's brain, mother's milk. Education begins before conception. Mother's diet before conception is important. She's overweight, has diabetes, it's going to affect your child. You will increase abnormalities in your child if you're overweight, and especially if you develop diabetes before and during pregnancy. The rate of abnormal children goes up. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and some of these things are extremely serious, like nervous system development, meningomyocele, hydrocephalus, much more common in diabetics. Mother's diet before conception is critical. Mother's diet during pregnancy is very important. Avoid diabetes or avoid pregnancy. Normal weight before pregnancy and during pregnancy is extremely important. So eat a nutrient-dense diet during pregnancy is great. Very important what you eat. Trans fatty foods, the ones with the nasty fats in them that paint your arteries and cause inflammation, found in biscuits, cookies, donuts, fried foods. Chips are nothing but fat trays. Remember I mentioned that already? Children's diet should emphasize fruits and vegetables. They should be all over your counter, readily available, have grapes available, have tomatoes available, bananas available, no sugary foods visible in the kitchen. Check food at schools, complain if you need to. The mother is the boss 80% of the time. Just remember that. There are certainly there are exceptions, but most of the time they do the buying, so you're in charge. Don't argue with your child on what to eat at home. You buy the food, they're going to get hungry. They're going to get hungry. If you take them on about it big times, sometimes you have to. Big time, it may not work out, but what's available, they will eat. So what I recommend, let's summarize it again. Low glycemic index complex carbohydrates, okay? And there's a website, glycemic index, you can find out you want to be under 50, not all the time, but the majority of the time. 100% whole grain, all the vegetables you can eat, all the beans you can eat. Become a bean eater, full of protein, full of good carbohydrates, some omega-3 in them. All the fruit, essentially you can eat. They're metabolized in the liver, much safer. Fructose metabolism, a lot safer. 1 ounce of nuts daily, depending on the size of the individual, of course, and have a few available in the car. The kids get hungry, give them a few nuts. It cuts off the appetite. I'm going to review here the Secrets of the Done Diet. These are my high recommendations. Go through these here. All carbohydrates are not alike. Starchy, complex carbohydrates quell hunger, turn up the internal furnace, burning calories, heat, and energy. High sugar, high fat, simple carbohydrates, the ones stripped of their fiber, cause food addictions and cravings. That's sugar, really. The same starchy carbohydrates that prevent disease and premature death can stop even and reverse disease. Dr. Dean Ornish proved it, that they can reverse disease eating this way I'm recommending. They did angiograms and proved it worked. Resistant starch is a complex carbohydrate, as we talked about, resistance to absorption of the bad chemicals and sugars. Refined carbohydrates reduce the good cholesterol, increase the bad cholesterol. Foods that promote weight loss are high in complex carbs, take more energy to digest, so you use up a lot of the calories in energy metabolism. Consumption of complex carbohydrates helps the brain produce higher levels of serotonin, which reduces your appetite, increase your feeling of well-being. Reducing saturated fat without reducing refined carbohydrates works against the goal to lose weight and prevent or reverse chronic disease. Saturated fat increases artery clogging LDL cholesterol. You want to eat the good fats, the monosaturated fats, the omega-3 fats. Trans fat offers what the Mayo Clinic calls a cholesterol double whammy. It raises the bad LDL and reduces the good HDL. Try to eliminate olive and other cooking oils. I mean, a tablespoonful is okay, but if you have a whole bunch of oils are 100% fat. So a tablespoonful of olive oil is just fine. I do not totally and completely believe in the Mediterranean diet. Dr. Furman said it's been studied in detail. A lot of the claims about it really are not correct. I heard him give a lecture on that. It's better than the way we eat, but it's not the greatest diet in the world because they exercise a lot more. They eat a lot more fruit than we Americans do. Animal protein raises cholesterol while plant protein lowers it because it's not accompanied by fat. There's no cholesterol in plant proteins. So to get the minimum amount of protein you need, which is about 35 grams a day, balance your vegetables and beans and a few nuts, and you will get all the fats and protein that you need. To lose weight faster, choose raw foods such as apples, carrots, cauliflower, bell peppers, and other whole fruits and vegetables. If you want to lose a pound a day, Dr. Furman has in his book, and I totally agree because I followed it and I lost a pound a day, is eat 100% the Nutritarian way. You will lose a pound a day. I've done it. I've been to his camp. Remember, I go once a year. 1 year I weighed 158. After 3 weeks, I was 145. And then it's stabilized, and then became a flexitarian. So I eat 80% that way. So to get rid of your diabetes, to lose weight rapidly, eat high dense nutrient foods 100% of the time, lose a pound a day. I've done it. It's in his books. I totally believe it. And let's talk about here a little bit here, The Secret of Type 2 Diabetes. This is a critical book because we have about 25 to 30 million Type 2 diabetics in this country. Remember I said Franklin House wrote a book like this, The 30-Day Miracle, so I know I have science behind me. He's done it for 30 years. I have experienced this in my classes and based on a number of other books. But I feel I can get rid of Type 2 diabetes 90% of the time in 60 days if I can get your BMI to normal and get you to exercise once a day. Type 1 diabetes is where your pancreas dies, say from autoimmune disease or infection. Very common, not very common, but it is seen mainly in children. But let me tell you something. If you're a Type 2 diabetic, 90% of the Type 2 diabetics who have too much insulin in their blood, they will become type 1. 90% of them. My God, now they need insulin. They get Type 2, now they get insulin. A horrible situation. And I never realized it was that high until I experienced and read it recently. So, and type 2 diabetes is epidemic in proportion. It's doubling every 10 years in this country. The amount of illness and cost will be astronomical. The amount of disease will be astronomical in our future. How do you diagnose this? Get a HbA1c that measures that's sugars attached to your blood cells. And blood cells last about 3 months, so it's an average blood sugar for 3 months. So HbA1c is a good test. It should be under 7 or so. Try to get around 6. Fasting blood sugar. After you stop eating for 8 hours, you get your blood sugar. Glucose tolerance test. These are all good tests for diagnosis. Fasting blood sugar being very important. Glucose tolerance tests being maybe even more accurate. Don't go in one test. Go in 2 or 3 tests and double check it. Type 2 diabetes is obesity related. If you're overweight, your odds of having be a pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic is extremely high. Type 1 diabetes, what are the symptoms? Excess hunger, excess urination, ravenous appetite, significant weight loss, excess of thirst. 90% of type 2 diabetics become type 1. Very interesting. Type 1 is not very common. 90% of diabetes is type 2. And the beautiful news is, not hard to reverse this. Learn to eat this way I teach. You don't have the disease. You have a monkey off your back. It's critical. I will add 20 years to your life. 20 years of no amputations, no renal disease, no blindness. We see a lot of blindness in type 2 diabetics. I see it commonly. So to get rid of metabolic syndrome or pre-diabetes or type diabetes is important to your life. And please listen to what I have to say about it. There's an evolutionary basis for metabolic syndrome. We talked about that already. Domestication of animals and farming led to it because we started putting animals in cages. They have too much fat in them. The animals that used to be free running throughout nature, and we had to run 20 miles to catch them and eat them. They had no fat on them. But now we put them in a cage for a year or two, fatten them up, and then we eat the darn thing. If you have trouble stopping eating meat, just think of that. That steak gets on you, that animal was caged for a year. They fed it till it was real fat, and now you're eating it. Give me a break. I have no trouble when I think of that, no trouble eating meat. I mean, how cruel, how cruel. And then we start processing food, stripping all the nutrients off the food, and we're eating pure sugar. And this is produced by the factories that we have now, and resulting in cornflakes, which is nothing but pure sugar. And so processing of food strips off the nutrients. Strips off the nutrients. Manufactured foods versus whole foods. That's the point. And then metabolic syndrome, we must have increased fats, HDL, LDL, low HDL, high LDL, hypertension, insulin resistance, obesity. I think you get the point here. Insulin resistance, let's talk about that. Very important. The role of fat. Fat is what it's all about. And insulin resistance leads to diabetes, but also other things, heart disease, strokes, diabetes, and cancer. Not everybody who is insulin resistant develops diabetes, but many of them develop cancer, dementia. A lot of Alzheimer's disease dementia is in people who have insulin resistance. Yes, dementia and Alzheimer's disease is found more commonly in overweight people and type 2 diabetics, unfortunately. So this has a lot to do with ATP, our energy molecule made by our mitochondria. So ATP, which is the energy of every cell, is made taking oxygen and blood sugar. So the sugar's got to get in the cell to join oxygen to make our energy molecule. We have no energy without ATP. So insulin resistance that causes diabetes, hypertension, vascular disease, cancer, autoimmune disease. This is the diagram I want you to have a good look at. A good look at, okay? This is a typical cell. In the middle, you see the end, the nucleus. On the outside, you see the eye. That's insulin, okay? The problem with type 2 diabetes is that the insulin cannot get the sugar, which are the little stars you see there, cannot get the sugar into the cell. It can't open the door because those little receptors, those pink things you see around the outside, they're clogged with fat. They're clogged with fat. So insulin cannot transport fat into the cell. So what does the pancreas do? See, it creates insulin tremendously. So the insulin in your blood, you see eyes there? The insulin increases tremendous in your blood. But remember what I said? That is very dangerous. Insulin causes arteriosclerosis, heart disease, autoimmune disease, cancer. So in the pre-diabetic stage, your blood sugar may be normal, but your insulin level is high, and you're going down the tubes in the 10 years before you get diabetes. So this, I think, very well demonstrates the ATP. You see it as O2 and sugar. The evil twins, inflammation and insulin resistance. They're the ones that destroy our body. See, fat causes inflammation. Remember, fat has in it 20 nasty chemicals that cause cancer and inflammation, arteriosclerosis, cancer, autoimmune disease. So inflammation is rusting of your arteries. The artery becomes inflamed because of the LDL, and then starts depositing cholesterol and arteriosclerosis and plaque, and clogs up our arteries. Blood sugar and protein in your blood combines, if you're running high sugar level, and forms what are called ages. Ages are the things that plug your small vessels, and that's what causes kidney disease, renal disease, and blindness, diabetic neuropathy, and that's what results in amputations you see commonly in diabetics. And that's another reason to get rid of your type 2 diabetes, to avoid blindness, to avoid amputations, diabetic neuropathy, heart disease, and strokes. See this almost daily. Inflammation is the immune response to inflammation. Dementia is increased with diabetes because, remember what I said, the fat in the blood and the insulin cause inflammation in the brain, especially the insulin causes inflammation in the brain. The golden opportunity, I mean, this is a big point. That's pre-diabetes. That's where the patient comes in, my blood sugar is normal, and I had a patient recently operated on their back, cured them of their back condition, but I noticed he was seriously overweight. So being myself, the wellness doctor, I run a metabolic panel on him, and everything was borderline high. HDL was almost normal, LDL almost normal, blood pressure almost normal, but a serum insulin, that's the test. I ran a serum insulin out of sight. What does that mean? Pre-diabetes. I put him on a program of weight loss and exercise. I probably added 20 years to his life. May have saved him from blindness, amputation, and maybe saved his kidneys. If he follows the program as outlined, is very important. And so waistline over 40 inches. If somebody walks in the room, they have pot belly, and the waistline is over 40 for men and over 35 for women. Odds are they are pre-diabetic. That's the golden opportunity. If I can turn things around right there, I had 20 years to their life. And a lot of people are pre-diabetic, they don't know it. They're metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetic, they're unaware of it. If you're overweight, have them do a serum insulin and make sure you don't have metabolic syndrome. High insulin levels are destructive to the body. You may have a normal blood sugar, but the insulin is destroying you. And many of these pre-diabetics grab their chest and die. Common cause of death in a pre-diabetic is a sudden heart attack or sudden stroke, like I saw recently. And the patient got quite upset because her daughter had noticed I was selling DVDs and giving diet courses at the Mind Body Institute, and her doctor in the same building walked past my institute every day, did not put her in that clinic, and she got very upset about him. She was from Brooklyn, like me, New York City, and she didn't mind speaking up and chewed her doctor out big time. I don't blame her. I don't blame her. She was laying there with a stroke, paralyzed on the left side from diabetes, which could have been reversed. So heart attacks and strokes are common. Stress and insulin. What's stress? Inability to cope with perceived or real threats of physical and emotional, physiological and spiritual well-being. That's stress. We all have it. I got it. Some people have more than others. That causes us to eat, because we secrete cortisol, steroids in our blood, and that causes us to overeat. Pot belly is usually a good sign of a stressful person. So cortisol stimulates eating, chronic stress reaction. We try to feel better, to secrete the dopamine and endorphins, to make serotonin, to make us feel good. So stressed out people have pot bellies. Reversing type 2 diabetes, what should we do? We should aim for normal BMI and waistline. Exercise daily, that's critical. Then follow the ways of eating. Remember I mentioned low glycemic index complex carbs, 100% whole grain, all the vegetables you can eat all the beans you can eat, at least 3 portions of fruit daily, omega-3 and multivitamin. If you do this, your BMI comes to normal. 90% chance you will not have type diabetes. You added years to your life, and maybe life itself. Fats, the good, the bad, and the terrible. Trans fats, remember, are the hydrogenated liquid fats. They took olive oil and hydrogenated it, and then it's a trans fat. They're saturated fats full of hydrogen atoms are very destructive to the body. What you want to be eating is monounsaturated fat, unsaturated fats. Omega-3 is the good fat. You can get it in flaxseed, in eating fish, in eating some nuts. And fat cells and fat magnets. Fat is a gland. Fat is a gland. It's just like a gland, any other gland. It makes 20 nasty chemicals, cytokines, inflammatory prostaglandins, which are destructive to our human body. They destroy our cosinoids, which are the intel chips of our body. They've been there from pre-evolutionary times. They jump from cell to cell and make our body work. That's really the computer of our body. The bad fats inflame them and destroy them. So 2/3 of the U.S. are overweight. 1/3 is obese, and it's heading higher. It's heading higher. And obesity-related conditions, acid reflux, sleep apnea, I see very commonly. They put this thing in your face for sleep apnea. But I tell you, if you follow this diet and lost about 20, 30 pounds, you won't have sleep apnea. So what should be the first thing on the schedule for someone with sleep apnea? Weight loss. Weight loss. And see if you can eliminate it in 2 or 3 months and avoid this thing over here. And I see it all the time. Weight loss is not pushed enough. It's not pushed enough. And obesity causes back pain, disc degeneration. I see it commonly. Increased rate of cancer. 20% of breast cancer caused by obesity. Heart attacks and strokes increase. Sexual dysfunction is common among overweight people. Hypertension is dime a dozen among the overweight people. Gallbladder disease is common. The 60-day cure, we talked about the 4 ways of eating. The flexitarian way of eating, which is the easy. Once you're normal weight, be a flexitarian like myself. It's easier. You can eat a little fish, eat a little shrimp here and there, but mostly it's high-dense nutrient foods. And watch your weight. I weigh myself every day. If it's even, I can sin a little bit. Heck, I'm not a perfect individual. Do you think I knew how to do this years ago? Heck no. My dad had a deli in New York. Our sandwiches were this big. Were huge. But that's not the way I eat anymore. So, and read my 5 books to motivate yourself. And The Magic of Nuts. Dr. Furman eats 1 to 2 ounces of nuts a day. I eat some every day. They reduce my appetite. Has a lot of omega-3. Good appetite suppressant. Don't eat a handful. That can be fattening. And there's a 45% decrease in heart disease people who eat nuts, an ounce of nuts daily. Reduces cancer, reduces dementia. And flax seeds are high in omega-3. Eat 100% whole grain. Whole grain means the grain has all 3 layers. Germ, bran, and endosperm. I'm going to show you a little illustration here. Watch out for fake-out foods. This shows you the bran, the endosperm in the middle where most of the calories are located, and the germ. But what do we do today? We strip off the bran, and we give people just the endosperm, and it's full. So eat the whole grain. The Psychology of Eating book here that I wrote about are very important. We spoke about that already quite a bit. Food is a drug. We have to eat every day. We have 200 food thoughts a day. Food releases chemicals, and unfortunately, because we eat every day, it gets to be in the habit. And food is used for psychological purpose more than any other substance, more than alcohol, more than narcotics or drugs. Very interesting. Food is a lifeline. If it stops the world and lets us get off. Eating is an automatic response to feelings. And lastly, I'd like to show you a book here a little bit about motivation. A very good book to read. 38 chapters of motivating yourself to wellness, many from a sense of purpose to motivating happiness, mind, body, spirit connection, creativity, good habits, visualization. Very motivating book to read. Thank you so much for listening. If you follow this way of eating, you're going to live to be 100 and be of sound mind. I can almost guarantee it unless you get hit by a Mack truck. Thanks so very much. I hope you look at our CDs, DVDs, and read some of our stuff. Thank you very much. I love you all.